Mission corner. No bounty. Yeah, that's a good point. Oh, are they chasing me? Are the stupid pirates chasing me? Oh no, that's just Brewing Zealots hanging out. There's so many people that want to fight me on this planet. It's such a happy place. Yes, you are right. And I'm going to do that right now. Let's go park. I'm gonna go someplace on this planet, someplace that's a little more useful. How about this? Can I just fast travel up here? I can't fast travel while driving. I'm going to go up there right now just because I want to be out and away from all these numbskulls. Okay, let's do this. Where's my ship? Yeah, I think this is as far as we're going to progress in the quest part of it. So the basic thing I've looked at, and I wanted to give this a couple of weeks. I actually put together a video about a week ago because, you know, the kind of negative stuff, what I would call the Starfield hate railroad fired up pretty quickly. And, you know, within the first day we were seeing some things, and I kind of break it out. I kind of break it out into two things, well, three things actually. And first and foremost, and I think you just said it there, Zygmunt, which is, you know, my experience with this game has been overwhelmingly positive. It has been overwhelmingly positive from the start, honestly. And even though I had some bugs that kind of broke some of the, here, what are we looking for here? I want the Fang suit. Some bugs that actually stopped me from progressing in the way that I wanted to progress, right? I guess that's the way to say it, right? So I had bugs early on where like Barrett's quest wouldn't complete and, you know, some stuff like that. And none of that was terrible because I was able to just kind of move through and go into New Game Plus on that particular character. Just didn't really have any real problems in that respect. Everything there was a workaround for. And so my experience with the game has been kind of overwhelmingly positive. And, you know, I went back and I looked at the sales data on the game, and I don't have that right here in front of me. Maybe I'll add that in a chart afterwards or something like that. That's pretty common for me. But this game moved, I think, 6 million units on the first week, and I think in June of this year we was at 14 million, and I started to calculate some of the numbers, and I just don't see a problem with the growth rate. The growth rate on the game is pretty good, even though people like to compare it with Cyberpunk 2077, and they like to, oh, I'm gonna have to shoot, am I gonna have to shoot a guy up here? I'm gonna go up to the top. That's Sarah. Hi, dude. So even though the growth rate is, I think it's pretty solid. I'm not worried about it really in any significant way. So the thing that I was looking at was there are three kinds of complaints that I see in general coming out against Shattered Space, or actually Starfield, even back to the start, but we'll talk about Shattered Space. And the first category are from the content creators. And there's some very, very big name content creators out there that have said some kind of absurd things about the game. And frankly, some of them that I've watched, you know, myself for quite some time, and I'm reminded that you know, their experience is very different than mine for some reason. Some of them were talking about finishing it very quickly. I think in the first day, and I'm not going to name their names, although, you know, you can go find the examples. There were some of them that were, you know, just coming out and claiming that things weren't in the game that were clearly in Shattered Space. And the one that came to mind very quickly was on X. One of them said something about there not being companions in Shattered Space. And we knew there were companions in Shattered Space if you played the game, right? Like if you actually went through it, you would find them. He was challenged about that online, and he immediately pivoted, kind of moved the goalpost and said, well, they're not the right kinds of companions, right? So the first group of complaints I saw that I would lump together are all from content creators, large content creators. And I don't think these people are dumb, and I don't really think they're really like emotionally engaged in the game either. I think they're just smart and taking advantage of the environment, right? There is an audience, or let's say a subset of game players out there, people, some who've bought the game, some who haven't bought the game, who were against Starfield early on, and they've kind of helped to cultivate that. And so to some extent, you know, I looked at these content creators, and some of them were putting out information very fast, and we're all facing that kind of pressure, which is, You want to put something out fast because you want the attention. That's the way YouTube works. That's the way, the money comes in, that kind of thing. And sometimes you get it wrong. And so there's a certain amount of that you can kind of forgive, which is just like, oh, they got it wrong. And you can tell if somebody reacts well when they're challenged on it, or they're shown that something's in the game that's not in the game. Some of them, I think, are just farming the people that watch YouTube that are into the negative kind of hate train on Starfield. And a fair amount of that started, many months ago, a year ago, right? This for better or for worse, let me go ahead and take care of this. For better or for worse, there's been some negative sentiment about this game for quite some time. And, and to some extent, these content creators, they look at that and it's money on the table. I mean, let's just be blunt. They're not dumb. They're looking at it and somebody's going to take that money off the table. And so they look at it and they're like, okay, I can farm that portion of YouTube viewers that are, they're going to watch. And without getting into too many details, and I don't know how many people watching have channels or don't. I looked through my subscriber list, and some people have channels, some of them bigger than mine. But there are two numbers that matter on YouTube. One is the CPM, which is like the cost per milli. Milli means 1,000, which is what advertisers pay to advertise on a video. And then there's an RPM number, which I think is revenue per milli, which is what a content creator gets. And it's a lower number. But, when I look at all the negative content that's been put out, the videos that are like, we have to talk about Starfield and Shattered Space is terrible and it's, Bethesda's going under or whatever it is. I don't think any of that's really true. But what I do notice is, somebody puts out a video, they put 30 minutes into it, they throw it over the wall to their editor and they have a thumbnail put on it. And if they're a large content creator, they're getting paid. That's just it. If their RPM is like $5 per 1,000 views, I went through some of the lists, and there's a $2,500 payday for somebody and who's doing a react to video on somebody else's negative video. There's even the smaller ones. You look at it, you're like, oh, that's a $250 video. That's a $500 video. And so the content creators that are doing that, I don't think they're emotionally involved in it, right? I don't know whether they hate or don't like the game, and maybe they have some legitimate, they think they're offering some legitimate concerns, but I think there's an opportunity afoot. So judge them or don't judge them. I try to avoid that myself. I don't have the kind of audience to do that anyway, but I would like to think I wouldn't do it. But there's two things in the content creator space. One is the speed to try to get out there where you make mistakes, and you can back that up and you can just say, I made a mistake. And then there are the people who are just farming the negative content. The second group of people that are complaining are viewers. They're us. I watch YouTube videos as well, but there are people who are caught up in this negative sentiment, this they call it Starfield hate train kind of thing, and they've already said something, or they've already kind of taken a public position, whether they're writing comments or they're starting arguments with people, or if you write something nice about Starfield, you say you like it. If you're on Reddit, you probably know about No Sodium Starfield, the other Starfield subreddit and things like that, and there's a lot of that kind of activity that's going on where people are arguing with each other about it, and it's it's almost a political or a religious level debate at this point in time. It's like, back in the good old days, you'd pick a sports team and you'd have a healthy rivalry, and you'd tell your buddy his team was terrible, and you'd still like sit down and drink a beer together and have fun. This has kind of gotten a little worse than that, and the issue I see is there's a group of people who play the game or maybe just own the game. Like when I looked at the negative reviews on Steam, and all these content creators would pull up that little, there's 2,000 people that wrote a negative review. First, that's nothing. There are 14 million players. We can do the math. It's not even 0.1%. It's a tiny number. And we can't even verify that they played the game, right? So there's a small group of people who are already ramped up about this. And I put them in that second group. And the first group is taking advantage of them. Once they're in that second group, it's kind of difficult to get out. People hate to admit when they're wrong. And I just, I'm not accusing other people of some kind of character defect. I don't personally feel I understand myself, right? It's difficult when you come out and you take a public position. You're like, I'm really against this thing, to walk that back. So there's a group of people out there who are complaining, and once they're into the mode of complaining, they're going to continue to complain. It's difficult to, change your your tact in front of your friends. They've raised the price of what it takes to actually, to come out and say, oh, I like this game now. It gets harder and harder. And I think those people trouble me a little bit, because if you challenge them and you get in arguments, and I do not recommend getting in arguments with people over a game, they can get hostile. They can, there's ad hominem attacks, and they can accuse you of things. Generally, their arguments are, and this is my interpretation, I don't think they're objective. I think they're subjective arguments. When I see things about the soul of the game and the character of the game and things like that, I tend to just discount those or ignore them for the most part. But the first group and the second group kind of feed off of each other. And they're kind of going around and around in a circle. And, we're not going to stop either one of those, right? The only thing we can do is if we find ourselves getting pulled into that cycle, maybe not with this game, but another game, is to kind of take a less aggressive tact and just kind of, back our way out of it, and, always keep our options open, right? I like to think, and lots of us love the redemption story of like No Man's Sky and some other games, or Cyberpunk for that matter, right? Where it came out and the game was really rough at the start, but over time got better. But if we look at Cyberpunk, I think it came out in 2020, and it was 1,000 days, like 1,010 days, I think, before they released the major DLC that everybody, that kind of turned everything around for people. And so Starfield is about a year, about 400 days into its cycle, and it was pretty solid. I think it was better up front than maybe Cyberpunk was. The DLC pricing, I'm not concerned. Those are all the same. People compare to Far Harbor, and Far Harbor's $25, inflation adjusted, it's something like $32. So there was no problem with Starfield Shattered Space as far as DLC pricing. And for 12 months in, it's in great shape. Now, the third group that I do count in this are, and this is me judging myself in this too, is like people with a legitimate objective complaint. There are problems in the game. These are execution problems on the part of Bethesda. They wrote code, and if anybody's been involved in a large software project or in IT or in something that complex over time, especially something that goes in the hands of consumers, it's difficult work. And I'm not excusing them because it's hard work. They get paid to do it, and that's fine. But it's also expected. There's a certain amount that's almost unavoidable given the complexity and the permutations in it. So there are legitimate complaints. And I think in my Starfield, my initial playthrough and the wrap-ups and follow-ups on that, I list the bugs I ran into. Now, for me, none of them ended the game for me in any way, shape, or form. But it's hard for me to judge if somebody has actually hit some of those and hasn't found some workaround for it, or if it's related to a creation or a mod or something to that effect. So again, three groups. There's the content creators up there, some of whom are just farming. There's the people in the middle who have been caught up into that and to some extent are enjoying it because it's like a political rivalry. It's just an argument people like to get into, and it makes them feel better about themselves that they're winning the argument. And it's hard to get out of it if you get kind of pulled into it. And then there's a group of people at the end who have some legitimate complaints that I think if we feed them back into the Bethesda to the Discord, maybe they get addressed over time. They've done a pretty good job every 6 to 8 or longer weeks in putting patches out there. But at the end of the day, the game is doing well. There's some objective measures, and it always amuses me because in my background, I'm a little more analytical. I see a lot of these bigger content creators, they just pull out this Steam review thing and tell you it's terrible. You can download the data, you can look at the actual monthly numbers. For some reason, they misrepresent them at times. I don't go argue with them, but the numbers are not bad. I think ultimately the only people who really know are at Microsoft or who are in Bethesda, and they seem to be pretty confident about what they're doing. I could be wrong, who knows, they'll come out, maybe they come out later and they say that things aren't panning out well, but almost everything they say is in the right direction, right? They're talking about how this has become the third pillar of their current focused intellectual property, let's say, portfolio, right? When you think about the games that they are supporting and that are still actively making money for them, that kind of thing. So, that's my general take on it. It's profitable to hate. It's profitable to find, you know, if you know that group's out there and you can make money off of them. I think it's kind of a shame, right? Because, you know, you do see some of those large creators and, you know, I look at some of them, I'm like, well, that guy just put $2,500 in his pocket, and all the people that are complaining and making comments and sniping at each other and things like that, you know what they got? They got nothing. They got absolutely nothing out of it. So that's my take on it. You know, I think, you know, I look forward to the next DLC. I look forward to the patches and the updates, because all along the way they have been dropping new content. You know, the Rev 8's an example. I'm still convinced that there's another Rev 8, a Rev 9, or some other version of that coming. I could be wrong. I think there are lots of things that they could do. I think the artifacts that people have found in the game that have to do with space stations or building your own space station or what looks like that, that's all pretty exciting as well. So, you know, if you've listened to that, I'll probably take that section and cut it out and put it in its own separate video. So I appreciate the reminder on that as well. It's a great game in my opinion. I like a lot of Bethesda games and a lot of other games too, but it's real easy to lose track of the longer term context in which even, you know, the ones that people think are doing really well have kind of evolved over time. Starfield is it's a brand new game. It's, you know, in terms of you know, intellectual property, or even, you know, time since its launch, it's stunning. It's only been a year, right? And, you know, we were just reminded, I think today, they started to put the information out on Fallout, that Fallout as a franchise has existed for 25 plus years, 1998. And, you know, there's a tremendous amount of loyalty to these games over time. They have been through numerous discount and seasonal cycles. Starfield's going to go through all that. Lots of people who are not playing it today are going to find a good discounted price on it. They're going to jump in. There'll be fewer bugs when they get in, and the game will just keep rocking on as far as I'm concerned. So I'm very comfortable with this, very comfortable with Shattered Space and the new things we've gotten out of it. I still think there's plenty to do. I get a lot of replay value out of it as well. So with that, I think I'm coming up on about the 3-hour mark, and quite frankly, at the end of a rant like that, I should probably just wrap this all up. Thank you so much for tuning in. Just a reminder, I am dual streaming on Twitch right now. I don't think anybody joined over there. Maybe 1 or 2 people joined. I saw them come and go. But I'm trying to learn how to watch that chat and the chat over here. I do most everything on YouTube. That's the best place to follow me, to keep up with any updates on Starfield and any other game as well, because I do post community posts as well. Thank you so very much to Zygmunt and HippieG for joining as members. You're my first 2 members on the channel. It is always a pleasure. And if you like this content and you don't feel like joining, feel free to buy me a coffee as a one-time thing. There are super chats and super thanks and things like that on the channel, or just show up and chat, comment on the videos and share them with people. That's all very cool too, and I greatly appreciate it. So with that, we're going to sign off, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks.